Welcome to the ADV channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to change brake pads on a 2012 Mazda 3 Skyactiv. What I got is a 2012 Mazda 3 Skyactiv 6-speed automatic transmission. This is a second generation Mazda 3. I'm pretty sure any year Mazda 3 with the second generation, the brake pads are all the same, but don't take my word for it because I'm not 100% sure. But this is a 2012 Mazda 3 Skyactiv, so if you have a Skyactiv, you're good to go. And I think every Mazda 3 has the same exact brake pads and everything and rotors, but the Speed 3 might have bigger brakes. I'm not 100% sure, so don't take my word for it. But I'm changing the brakes on 2012 Mazda 3 Skyactiv. I am using Duralast brake pads from AutoZone. First is you have to take off the wheel, and in my case, I have spikes on my wheel, so I have to take off the spikes first before taking off the lug nuts. Next, this is where you want to put your jack. This is how I put it, the jack right up there. You don't want to put it on this little lip thing over here. And if your car is lower, not all jacks can fit underneath it. So what I recommend is you may need to get your portable car jack from the Mazda that comes in with your Mazda. Jack it up as much as you can and then put the real big jack underneath there. What you want to do is jack it up a tiny bit so there's some tension against the car, and then you want to loosen up the lug nuts. Next, what you want to do is check the rotor for any damage. For the rear, you could easily see that it spins freely. It's smooth and in line. It's not any damage. Rust a little bit, it's okay. Now, if it's super rusty, you live up north, you may have to change it. But basically, if you're driving on here, no grinding, no scraping, you're good to go. You're also looking for the rotor to be warped, and there's not warped. Also, the edge. If it's like super worn out by the brake pads, it'll be deep in there, and this edge will be not in line and flush with the rotor. Also, you're looking for any deep scratches, basically looking for any defects, and in this case, this rotor looks perfectly fine with just the occasional little surface rust, which is totally fine. Now, also, you want to look in the back of the rotor as well. Kind of hard if you got a dust guard, but you should be able to see the rotor behind the brake caliper and make sure the surface behind there is good as well. And in my case, it is just perfectly fine. Right now, I will be changing the rear brake pads. You will need a 9/16 wrench in order to remove the bolts. One on top here, one on the bottom here. Basically saying you may need a breaker bar to break it free, but there's no absolutely way for you to get a socket in there because of how much space in there. So unfortunately, I'm glad I'm changing the brakes now because I just caught this, but this bolt is already loose. It's not all the way in there. And the one on the bottom is not loose, which is right over here, which may need a breaker bar to take off. So let's start with actually, we could start with the bottom bolt first. Try to go with the hammer, which in my case, I have done it, and that will break the bolt out. So the top bolt can be a little tricky to remove. So you might have to do just a little bit at a time because the brake lines are in the way to remove it all the way. So you're just gonna have to do a little bit of time, and then when it's loose enough, just take it out by hand. Then you can pop off the brakes, kind of like get some leverage. Always use a rubber hammer. What you want to do is grab a flathead screwdriver and remove the spring. When the spring completely is off, that's when you could take off your old pads. Remember to take pictures of how it used to stand. That way you don't get mixed up. I don't really need to change them, but I'm going to change the front, so I may as well change the back and show you how to change the front and the back. So as you can see down there, this requires a special tool to squeeze the pistons back out, but honestly, all you need is 2 pliers, one clamping down this side and the other spinning, and you should be able to clamp down on the piston all the way, but it takes 2 people to do this. Well, there you have it. No special tool needed, and we squeeze the piston back in. So when putting back the brake pads, what you're gonna do is you're gonna put the top first and then the bottom next. You're gonna slide underneath. That's the easiest way to do it. And usually you're gonna have to put it with the spring towards there. Now we gotta put the top spring back on. So when you put the top spring back, you want to hold with your, at least with one thumb, you want to hold the top brake or this brake pad against this as much as possible. The springs are supposed to sit right here. I was able to do it by hand. You may have to play around with the caliper back and forth a little bit until you get into the springs here. They cannot be on the outside. The springs have to be on this right here. And once that is complete, you are good to go. Everything is ready to go, and you just got to put the rotor back on. I took the rotor out because it was in the way, and once you finish with that, you can put it back on. What you may want to do also is WD-40 the bolts. Okay, so tighten the bolt in the bottom too. What you want to do next is see if it spins freely. That little sound you hear, it's okay, simply for the fact because you're gonna press the brakes once, and then it will be automatically adjusted to how it's supposed to be. Next, just put everything back, all the wheels in back, and then I'll show you how to do the front brakes as well. So time to do the front brakes. This is on the passenger side. Doesn't really matter what side I showed you. I just finished doing the rear on that side. So you're gonna need 11/16 wrench to get the 2 bolts down there, one on top and one below. So basically I'm using this breaker bar, and I hold this wrench with one hand from behind so it won't come out, and I hit it with that until it breaks loose. Believe it or not, you can fit a socket wrench in there, and then you could actually take it out a whole lot easier once you break it open. You could use a socket wrench to break it free if you can find some kind of breaker bar that can fit under here, but that's just the way I did it, my method. I haven't broke anything yet. So I'm able to remove this by hand actually. A lot easier, and I'm gonna remove the brake caliper and inspect it, which it is all good. And when you remove the brake caliper, it's a little easier to work on that. Again, same story. The spring removes with a flathead. Easy to take these off. They kind of clip in. So now it's time to push the piston back in. So with this, it's pretty simple. To squeeze it, all you gotta do is grab up pliers, and another trick is to grab the old brake pad where it's flat and then squeeze with all your might. So where the piston is, this is the old one, you're gonna put the new one on there, and you may need a flathead screwdriver to kind of push the clip in, but once you push it in, it's pretty easy just to get it in there. And this one is straightforward. You just put it in, and then the hard part is gonna be that spring. So with the spring, the same thing like on the rear. You're gonna have to put it on one side, and with your hands hold like this in, stretch it down, stretch it out, and then with the end of the butt of the flathead, not the flathead itself, you're gonna tap in the spring all the way, and you might have to play around with the caliper until the spring is fully on the caliper here holding these brakes. Well, after that, it's pretty straightforward. You just really tightly tighten those bolts, and you're good to go. Next, what you want to do is put the wheel back on and stuff, and then do the other side exactly the same way, and check if the rotors are all good as well. And there's one more step I got to tell you to do. Well, one thing you should always do is engage the parking brake, which is the rear wheels, whenever you're changing the front brakes. The last thing you should always do is check to see if you have enough brake fluid. This is brake fluid right here. As you can see, this is my minimum, then my max is over here. As you can see, I could kind of see where it's at. It's right above the minimum. I will top it off later on, but you always got to make sure that you have enough brake fluid after doing a brake job. Not cancel. Guys, I'm Eddie B. 2004 turn right. driving attempt on the 6 Series.